Have you ever wondered why some people, who seem to have the exact same intelligence and drive as everyone else, just take off? They convert their effort into this rare, highly paid mastery, while most of us remain, well, economically average. This isn't about working harder. It's about understanding the hidden physics of the skill market. And in this explainer, we're going to dissect that system.
Here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll lock onto the core signal that most people just completely miss. Then we'll dive into 3 invisible traps that spring from that misunderstanding. We'll look at the underlying mechanism driving it all and the very real cost of getting it wrong. Finally, we'll explore the mindset that gives high performers their edge and leave you with some sharp questions to help you calibrate your own path.
All right, first up, the signal. This is the big one. It's this counterintuitive truth about how the market actually values your work. And honestly, it's where most people's assumptions go wrong right from the get-go. I mean, think about it. We all know someone who is brilliant, who works incredibly hard, but feels underpaid or stuck. This is the central puzzle we're tackling today. So if raw effort and pure intellect aren't the main drivers of a high income, what is?
This slide just frames the core misunderstanding perfectly. The common belief is that value is additive. You just add more skills, you add more hours, and voila, you're more valuable. But the market reality, it's multiplicative. It rewards compounded depth in one specific area, constantly checked and adjusted by real-world feedback. That single distinction changes absolutely everything.
So, how does this disconnect actually show up in the real world? Well, it creates a pattern of 3 invisible traps that predictably derail most careers, often without the person ever even realizing what's happening.
The first, and let's be honest, the most common trap is chasing shiny objects. Every single time you jump to a new, unrelated skill, you're not just starting over, you are actively resetting your compound growth all the way back to 0. You lose all that hard-won context, your network relevance, and the deep pattern recognition that made you valuable in the first place.
And here's the outcome of that choice. The chronic switcher ends up with broad but shallow familiarity. They're driven by novelty, which feels exciting, but it makes them incredibly easy to replace. The deep specialists, on the other hand, builds continuity. Their position in the market becomes clear, recognizable, and that gives them real pricing power. It makes them difficult and expensive to replace.
Now, the second trap is just as dangerous, but it's way more subtle. Broken feedback loops. This is what happens when you practice in a vacuum. Without some kind of external measurement from data, from mentors, from actual clients, you have no way of knowing if you're actually getting better or if you're just getting more efficient at doing the wrong things. Your mistakes fossilize and your confidence grows, but your market relevance is quietly shrinking. So in a closed environment, effort feels like progress. Your ego is safe and everything feels good, but this is exactly how stagnation becomes invisible. In a calibrated environment, your ego is constantly being challenged by objective feedback. Yeah, it can be uncomfortable, but it is the only way to make sure your improvement is real and targeted toward what the market actually values. And finally, the third trap, confusing sheer repetition with actual practice. This is where that whole 10,000 hours idea gets so misunderstood. Just accumulating hours doing the same thing over and over makes you proficient, sure, but it doesn't make you an expert. It just preserves your current level of competence. It doesn't do a thing to expand your actual capabilities.
So the crucial point here is the difference in focus. Undirected repetition is all about volume, and that just leads to you being interchangeable. Deliberate practice, though, is friction-focused. It intentionally seeks out and isolates your weaknesses. That's what creates true economic differentiation. That's what makes you non-replaceable. Okay, now that we've seen the patterns, let's look under the hood at the mechanism that's driving them. This isn't about habits or motivation. This is about the cold, hard physics of how a market decides what a skill is actually worth. You see, high performers operate on a compounding loop. They don't just practice. They target a specific weakness. They apply friction. They make it hard on purpose. Then they go out and seek objective feedback, integrate what they've learned, adjust, and repeat the cycle. And every single turn of that wheel increases their leverage and their value in the market. This chart really says it all. Undirected repetition requires a massive investment of hours for a tiny return in market value, but deliberate practice, it allows a much smaller investment of focused, intense time to generate disproportionately higher value. It's not about the hours you put in, it's about the quality and intensity of those hours.
If you remember one thing from this, let it be this. The market is indifferent to your hard work. It doesn't pay for hours. It doesn't pay for effort. It pays for rare and valuable capability that solves a painful problem and is hard for other people to replicate. Period. Misunderstanding these signals isn't just some theoretical problem. It comes with a very, very real cost. You can think of it as a stagnation tax that's paid by everyone who follows the default path. So who pays this tax? Well, it's a skilled professional who can't figure out why they're underpaid. It's the dedicated employee who works incredibly hard but somehow remains replaceable. It's the generalist who has years of experience that never seems to translate into real leverage. Ultimately, it's anyone who believes that the clock on the wall is the best measure of value. And let's be crystal clear about this. This is not an intelligence problem. The people who fall into these traps are often brilliant. It's a systems problem. It's a failure to see these invisible market signals, and that results in a complete mispricing of their own capability. So, what's the alternative? Well, the edge doesn't come from some new productivity hack. It comes from a fundamental shift in perception, a leverage mindset that views skills not as hobbies, but as economic assets. This is how they think. They stack skills to create unique leverage, not just for the sake of variety. They gain real options through deep expertise, not by being a jack of all trades. They build their skills in a way that can be transferred to new, high-value markets. When they negotiate, it's based on how hard they are to replace, not how many hours they worked. And most crucially, they see their capability as a financial asset that is designed to compound over time. Look, this isn't about giving you easy answers. The goal of this whole explainer is to give you a better framework for thinking. So let's end this by turning the lens on you with 3 sharp questions to help you calibrate your own trajectory. First question, and be honest with yourself here. To confront that shiny object trap, how many skills have you started but not finished? Resetting your compounding clock back to 0 each and every time. Second question, and this one is about repetition versus practice. Are you just putting in the hours, or do you have an objective, data-driven system to track if you're actually getting better? Are you measuring progress, or are you just measuring motion? And finally, this might be the most important question of all. Who in your life, a mentor, a client, an audience, who is giving you the kind of unfiltered, objective feedback that you need to close the loop and ensure your skills are actually aligning with what the market truly values? Your answer to that question, well, it might just tell you everything you need to know.